My name is Max. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Forward Fooding. And today we are basically celebrating the launch of a recent report that we've published on the AgriFoodtech ecosystem in Latin America that we see as a burgeoning but growing very fast as a food tech ecosystem. If you can move to the next slide, I'll say just a few words about what we're going to be talking about today. Very briefly, we're going to basically say a few words about what we do at Forward Fooding, and then present the reports very quickly. And I will hand over to my colleague Leonardo for that. And then most of the content of this conversation will be with entrepreneurs from Latin America, covering different stages of the supply chain and some of the most exciting companies that are operating in the region, and hopefully we have some time towards the end for some questions and Q&A. And hopefully, the idea is to make it like a conversation that is as interactive as possible. So in the audience, should you have any questions, please type them in the chat, and we will redirect them to the speakers, or even stop the conversation if it's into the conversation. So just don't hesitate to shout out. Very briefly about Forward Fooding, if you move to the next slide, please. In a few words, Forward Fooding, most of you know us about with the FoodTech 500 competition that we've been organizing, for the past 4 years now. But as an organization, our core mission really is to foster food innovation, to redesign our food system. And how we do it is basically connecting all different stakeholders from the global food tech ecosystem, from startups to corporates, consumers, investors, research organizations, and accelerators. Concretely speaking, how we do our work is basically articulated around 3 main pillars. The first one, and where we spend most of our time, is actually to do consulting and startup scouting for corporate clients of the food industry and investors. So we would work with the open innovation or R&D teams in the likes of Cargill, General Mills, Dole, Mondelez, Nestlé, Danone, and a few other companies to help them understand different trends and market dynamics of the food tech sector, and help them identify some challenges in matching them with startups to do pilot projects, investments, or other commercial partnerships. That's our core mission. On the side of that, we have a food tech data navigator database, which is something that we've launched back in 2019. But it's basically a database monitoring all the agri-food tech ecosystem in terms of startups, investment trends, and all the actors around them, meaning investors and accelerators and all other types of stakeholders. Our clients basically can access our database via monthly subscription, but primarily that's the tool that we use on a daily basis to do consulting and scouting. And then the last bit of our work is everything else that we do and what people most know us for, which is what we do in terms of community building and trying to give visibility to startups and raising awareness about food tech. One of the key initiatives is the FoodTech 500, for which I'll say a few words in a bit. But we also have food innovation hubs in London and Barcelona, where we incubate a number of companies and also organize some events on regular basis to foster the ecosystem at local level. Next slide, please. The FoodTech 500, you probably have seen that we released the 4th edition of the ranking already. Time is flying. But over time, that competition received more than 7,500 applications from startups globally, present across more than 180 countries. We get support from 50+ international media partners, and are starting to get quite a lot of traction online with the competition that is becoming a true benchmark for the industry. If you move on to the next slide, please. If you haven't seen the ranking yet for this year, it was actually announced on the 1st of March. If you click on this link on left, you'll be able to see the full ranking and also download the white paper, where you have access to a number of metrics and more information about the ranking. And if you have any startups in the audience, we strongly encourage you to already apply for next year's edition. If you move to the next slide, please. If you click on this link, you have the application form to apply for the 2023 FoodTech 500, which will be closing in early Q4 of this year, and then we'll be building the next ranking. So without further ado, I'll pass it to my colleague Leonardo, who is leading our research and data at Forward Fooding. He's going to say a few words about our report.
Thank you, Max. Hi, everyone. hola, I would say also. Thank you very much for joining, and excited to be here today to show you a little bit about our key findings in the LATAM report, and to host an interesting chat with some of the most prominent companies that are out there. Obviously, as a reminder, right here you have a QR code in case you want to download the report itself. But basically, just to give you a sense of what you will find in it, we're talking about macroeconomic analysis, obviously a deep dive on the agri-food tech sector, showcasing the key numbers, the investment trends, and basically all these strengths and weaknesses of the ecosystem. Then we mapped out the entire ecosystem, and finally we have some very insightful expert interviews that propose a different ways of looking at it. And just to give you some sense about the key numbers that you'll find in the report, we're talking about, we're looking at an ecosystem that is composed of over 430 startups that cumulatively raised over 7 billion euros since 2013, and that crucially seeing the investments in 2022 being 3.5 times those that were in 2018, despite all the ups and downs of the ecosystem. And as we all know, the fact that in 2022, the macroeconomic environment of the startups, especially in the agri-food tech, but in general, I should say, changed dramatically. So quite an interesting ecosystem to look at that also, interestingly enough, had 52 exits over the course of the years. And just in terms of key learnings and what we found out in this report is that essentially the funding is aligned with the global ecosystem when it comes to the concentration of funding rounds being primarily in early stage deals. The fact that on the other hand, it's an ecosystem that is growing much faster when it comes to funding in a CAGR of a 5-year period compared to other key geographies such as Europe and the US, which are showing a much slower growth. And in general, the fact that food delivery accounts for a big part of the entire ecosystem when it comes to funding. As I mentioned, we mapped out the entire ecosystem. So just to give you a snapshot of all the different companies that are split across our 8 main categories and verticals. As you can see, we have got a bit of ag tech, but also food delivery, and basically we have a good selection of all companies active in this space, together with all the other key stakeholders such as investors or ecosystem supporters or incubators and accelerators. But without further ado, let me introduce you to the speakers that we have today. We have Gaspar from Kitchenita. We have Juan Pablo from Michroma. We have Martin from Moolec. We have Anikia from Perfekto, and we have Mario from Instacrops. Thank you guys for joining today's webinar and to be here to talk about the ecosystem. I would say let's start up with this conversation by giving a little bit of an introduction about you, your company, and essentially what kind of impact you're generating on the food system with your company. I don't know if there's any preference on who wants to start on this. Maybe Gaspar, you look like a...
Sure. Yeah. I'll start. Hi guys. Really happy to be here. So Kitchenita is a LATAM-based startup. We have operation nowadays in Argentina, Colombia, Mexico. We did 2 rounds. In total, we raised about $4 million. And we have a software that enables a deep understanding of consumer trends in the delivery space. So through data scrapping and a system using bots, which are little computers, we understand what are the main trends in Uber Eats, Rappi, or Pedido Ya, which are the main delivery platform that we use in the region. And based on that info and insights, we create virtual restaurants that are based on data, and we franchise them to any kitchen infrastructure across the region to add an additional revenue stream to any business. Could that be an hotel, Alsea, which is the master franchise for Burger King or Domino's in Mexico, or any kind of restaurant kitchen. And we add those virtual restaurants to their operation. without any specific need or disruption, as we also supply the food to them. So I think one of the main thing that we are doing in terms of impact is understanding better what we are consuming and what will be the next trends in terms of food consumption in the delivery space.
Thank you very much, Gaspard. Very interesting to learn about your company. Let's move on to Juan Pablo, just because I'm just going by order of how I see them. There's no preference here. Hi, Juan Pablo.
Of course. Hi, everyone. So my name is Juan Pablo, and I work at Michroma. We are a food tech startup, and we are developing natural ingredients such as food colorants, flavors, and fragrances using fungi and incorporating precision fermentation and synthetic biology. We are developing this portfolio of ingredients to bring sustainable and healthier alternatives to the food and cosmetic market. We are focusing our efforts on developing a red natural food colorant that's capable of replacing artificial ingredients that are petroleum-based. And given the rise in the concerns regarding health and also sustainability of petroleum-based ingredients, we are positioning ourselves as a leading food tech fermentation startup.
Thank you very much, Juan Pablo. Interesting to learn about all these biotech technologies being developed. And I guess I'll just seize the occasion to move on to Martin and to introduce yourself and the company.
Sure, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Salinas. I am CTO at Moolec Science. So let me tell you a little bit about Moolec. So we are a food ingredient company, mainly in the alternative proteins and the nutritional oil spaces. We use molecular farming as our main platform, our main technology, where we genetically modify food crops to produce animal proteins and new traits on the plant. The idea is basically to enhance its properties. So in terms of the impact, you may know that some of the main challenges of the plant-based industry is, to have I would say, a healthy and more delicious product, right? So our idea is to enhance the intrinsic properties of the crop by using genetic modification, introducing animal genes into the crop to enhance flavoring, texture, nutritional profile, and so forth for the main food crops.
Seems like science to me, but well, sorry, I just wanted to say sci-fi, but it's indeed science. Thank you very much, Martin. Moving on to Mario to introduce Instacrops.
Hi, Leonardo. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Mario Bustamante. I'm CEO and co-founder of Instacrops, electronics engineer from Chile, and also second founder. Today, we are helping farmers maximize the crop yield in Instacrops. We started with the IoT or sensor part. I think different to my colleagues here. We started doing hardware, installing sensors in fields. So today, we're taking different data sources and becoming all of those in real-time insights for farmers. So we are on a mission now. We want to connect farmers with their fields and become the first operating system from farmers. So the principle or the main value that we're adding right now is for agricultures, farmers, more than 300 so far in 7 countries in Latin America. And also we raised 5.5 million in venture capital. So today we are wondering how we can connect another dots in the industry and giving this assistance for farmers, but as third parties like banks, agrochemicals companies, taking advantage of all of this data infrastructure that we are building in Latin America. So yeah, super excited about me here with you guys.
Thank you, Mario. Exciting to learn about how we can improve agriculture over there and overall. And last but definitely not least, Anahi from Perfekto. Hi, Anahi.
Yeah, hi. So yeah, super excited to be among these amazing startups. So in Perfekto, we offer a subscription box of affordable and high quality imperfect food items so that we aim to reduce food waste. So I'm telling you a bit more about the problem that we discovered when we decided that we wanted to launch Perfekto. So there are two big problems in the food industry related to accessibility, right? So on one side, we have 1/3 of all food being wasted, and usually has nothing to do with food quality, right? There are different reasons, but commonly has to do with supply chain inefficiencies or physical imperfections because they look ugly, weird, too big, too small, and it has nothing to do with their quality, right? But on the other hand, we also see that access to nutritious food in Latin America, it's usually more expensive each time. So it was nonsense to think that there was a lot of surplus food, but that we were not making a good use of it. So that's how we launched Perfekto, and how it looks. It's a subscription box that you can customize, and you can you can decide when you want to receive it, what you want to receive. And we offer fruits, veggies, and any other kind of packaged goods that you wouldn't believe, but that are being discarded because of labeling errors or typos in the labels, or because they're less than 6 months away from preferable consumption date. And for those reasons, like, supermarkets usually don't accept them. So that's what we do with Perfekto. And yeah, we currently operate in Mexico, and yeah, we build a model that benefits really all of the parties, because producers get to increase their earnings, consumers get to have a very convenient option that is also very, very affordable while doing good. So yeah, that's what we do at Perfekto.
Thank you guys for doing what you do. And thank you all the startups, honestly, for just trying to make the food system a better and more fair food system and more sustainable one. So I guess my first question would be directed to all of you, and just to hear your opinion on the fact that, well, as we all know, 2022 was definitely, a different year than what we experienced in 2021 and the years before then. Generally, we could argue that we're on the new wave of food tech, in a way, with valuations that are being lowered all over the place, and capital that is becoming more difficult to be raised by startups. So in general, I would say, well, what are the challenges that you're facing as a company nowadays? And moving this to the bigger picture, and in this case, looking at LATAM, as we're talking about that, what is the biggest challenge that you feel food tech is experiencing in that region nowadays?
You want to continue the same order?
No. I mean, there's no order now. If any one of you has something to say, feel free. Absolutely.
No, I think it's a pretty interesting thing for LATAM in general, right? I mean, we got through a period of massive liquidity where we could basically raise money with a PowerPoint and a path to profitability from here to 10 years. The market changed, definitely, and I think it's a great thing, because the cleaning spree that's currently happening in the food tech space, in the ag tech space in LATAM, oblige us, I think, as an entrepreneur, first to make our numbers way more sound and logical from day one, to be really looking at a P&L, reduce our burn, not being expanding for expansion, but really expand when we found product market fit. And I think we're going to find startups with better execution in the next 2-3 years. And the startup that survived 2023 and 2022, I think they have more chance of becoming great companies in the next 5 years because of that crisis. The same thing with wine. Difficult harvest usually brings the best millésime, as we say in French, and the best bottles. And I think it's going to be the same thing for startups.
That's only fair, to be honest. I kind of feel the same way. It's going to be brutal, but definitely the companies that will be able to survive and have a more organic growth are going to be the ones that will experience definitely the highs of the new wave of food tech. I don't know if any one of you has something else to say about this or has an opinion.
Maybe I'd like to.
You go ahead, Anthony.
I wanted to compliment with this part we're saying, because I do agree. I think that's our main challenge right now. And particularly, I was thinking about like the food tech industry, and we usually operate between these two worlds, like the digital and the physical world, which makes it a bit more challenging, as it's usually like models that are way more sustainable, and then you can actually like see the product and touch it. And but I think that adds layers of complexity, because you need to make sure that you're operating the leanest way possible while maintaining a healthy runway and maintaining like very attractive economics. So I think that adds some kind of complexity that I do agree. I think it's also good news, because we're all going to be getting out of this stronger, more optimized, more efficient. But I do see that particularly in the food tech industry, that makes it more interesting and more challenging.
Yeah, there's definitely always a silver lining. Martin, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say also 2023, maybe 2024. So because of the things that you guys were mentioning, I think this is also the time for us to be creative in terms of how we should look for new funding, right? So because maybe the way, because remember that in the past there was like a boom in terms of SPAC and public listed company. Now you have more like merger and acquisition, right? So the M&A is sort of on the new game, let's say, in the industry, and we don't actually know what would be the next game. So I think it's the time for us to be creative, to think out of the box in terms of getting our next funding round, and try, to think what would be the next, right? Is still the era of merge, or there will be something else for us?
And it's interesting that you mentioned this, Martin, because I actually wanted to ask you specifically about your case, since you went public at the early beginning of 2023, which was definitely a challenging time, because I mean, I'm sure that the preparation goes on during 2022. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And in general, what do you think has been changed about the perception of molecular farming in your case specifically?
Right, exactly. So this is where I was coming from, because us to be now publicly listed was sort of a way for us to look at a new way to fund, and this is exactly what is an inorganic growth, right? This is very inorganic growth for us, and that is a challenge itself, right? Because we went from 1 to 100 in a couple of months. And it's a challenge for us to adapt to the new dynamic, the new pace, and everything. But that is good. That's something that to stress what and I sort of said, that it makes us stronger, right? Once we adapted ourselves in the new in this new realm, we are stronger. We're better prepared to discuss with the industry, with the company, with and also thinking in the next funding round. In terms of how this may impact the industry, specifically molecular farming, I think this is, this is the time for molecular farming to become a relevant player in the industry, right? Because there are just a few companies dealing with this technology, although we have been working with it more since maybe 10 years ago. So I think this is the time for molecular farming to be relevant, and the way for it is just to speak about it, right? To communicate what molecular farming is, what is the safe use of GM crops in the food industry, right? That is kind of a tricky thing to discuss in some spaces. Some investors, some stakeholders do not want to discuss the use of GM materials in the food industry and so forth. So we think this is the impact that we want to promote, that to bring the technology in the space, to discuss about it, to talk about safety, and so forth.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. I mean, I can only imagine it's being GMO crops being tricky, or GM crops being a tricky topic of conversation anywhere. So, but there's also a lot of misunderstanding, I believe. You know, and it's definitely a field that needs to be talked about, an area that needs to be talked about. At least so that people will start to know it, right? And then the understanding will come as a consequence.
Right. So who have thought in the past that a molecular farming company with the public dealing with the GM for food, right? So I think it's we hope that the impact will be positive.
I mean, I'm generally an optimist, so I would tend to agree with you. I guess time will tell in that case, but I mean, I'm sure there will be absolutely a positive impact. And talking about 2022, I guess I wanted to also ping Gaspard specifically on Kitchenita's activities, because in 2022, you've been very active too, since you expanded in Mexico and you started with a collaboration with Sigma, which is one of the major F&B corporates out there. You entered into its accelerator program. So I just wanted to ask you, like, what was it like doing all this in 2022? Like, definitely not.
I think we were way too active. For sure. So basically, we had to, we had to rewind a few things after launching 2022 with the fresh, we got freshly funded in February 2022. And one of the main things we realized 5 months in 2022 is that we really wanted to open Mexico, but Mexico is an extremely important market. It's strategic for any startup willing to do a good Series A in Latin America, but it's not an easy market. It has a lot of difficulties, both in terms of legal issues. It's a market we really need a local partner. And Sigma was definitely a good player for us. I think it's extremely difficult still today to work with big corporations. It's a main challenge for startups because we don't have the same timelines. We take decisions 10,000 times quicker than they do. But we do need them in some aspects, especially in the food tech or ag tech space, because I mean, Sigma is one of the largest producers of food in the country. And at the end of the day, although we have a lot of data, we sell food for a living. So we partner with them in Monterrey and Ciudad de Mexico in 3 different aspects. But mainly, I would say one of the things that we are doing with big CPGs of the companies is helping them with data to understand the next product that they should be developing based on what we're seeing in terms of consumption trends on delivery platforms. So we help them on that aspect. We also help them optimizing their dark kitchens with our virtual restaurant. We put some of our brands there, but we also partner with Notco, which is a Chilean unicorn doing plant-based products. And these are similar kind of deals that we are trying to do at Kitchenita to optimize our expansion plans and limit the necessity of, OPEX and CAPEX that we should be putting as a startup to open new geographies.
Yeah, exciting times, even during moments of what seems crisis, it's always, when you see the light. And talking about light, and I'm referring to Juan Pablo now, I mean, you even raised funding in 2022. Like, I mean, I bet it was January, it was still probably, I guess, difficult. So I would ask you probably what were, can you walk us through what was it like for a company like Michroma to raise funds in this time, and what are you expecting in the next 12 to 18 months, more or less, with this funding round?
Yeah, absolutely. So we opened a round in 2022, and we were seeing a lot of positive market signals for raising capital it's always a challenge to raise a funding round. But once we opened our round, it became especially difficult because of the macroeconomic context, because of the decrease of capital inflow into food tech startups. So as Gaspar mentioned earlier, it was a tough thing to do, but at the same time, it forced us to bring our A game and be able to present this new way of making natural ingredients to investors that ultimately ended up trusting us in what we are planning on doing on the next 12 to 18 months. We are very happy to have successfully raised Latin America's largest biotech seed round. And we are very excited to continue to deploy this capital in our efforts to increase the production of our ingredients. We are currently scaling our production, and at the same time, we are continuing our efforts in the regulatory space. We are currently looking to get regulatory approval to bring these natural solutions to the market.
Yeah, and I guess if there's one thing that you guys at Michroma and you guys at Moolec have in common is regulation, which is definitely not very forgiving when it comes to being at the edge of science and development, I guess. And let me ask you another thing, Juan Pablo, very quickly. Did you manage to glimpse into the VC landscape in LATAM while you were raising funds? Yeah, what did you see anything? What is your take on that? Like, how's it going?
Yeah, definitely. So we raise funds from all over the world, from Europe, Asia, and North America, but Latin America as well. So we had some investors investing from our pre-seed round into our seed round, and we had new investors, and we were very happy to see that there are really world-class investors here in Latin America, and that they add a lot of value, having a larger geographical footprint and enabling us to make not only connections with corporates, but with other top-level investors from the venture capital here in Latin America.
So basically, you're saying that even if you're a company in one geography, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to raise funds in that specific geography. Quite the opposite, perhaps.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah. Good. Go ahead.
Yeah. So after a pandemic, it became very common to raise funds from anywhere in the world, just using video conference. And I think that showed to a lot of people that being in a global economy and being able to establish connections all around the world makes a lot of sense when you are aiming to create a worldwide impact, when you're looking into making global distribution agreements, and when you're trying to create the largest impact possible.
And talking about impact, and now I'm taking a step back here. Just wanted to have everyone's opinion, really, on once again specifically about LATAM, but generally, like, you know, what's your take on the different stakeholders and the kind of like action that they need to take in order to have a more meaningful impact in solving, you know, food industry challenges, and you know, generally trying to basically change the status quo of food industry. And I'm talking about LATAM in this case, just because I mean, your all companies are more or less based in the region, so you have a strong connection there. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts really on how the interaction with the different stakeholders would need to be. I know it's a tough question.
It's not a tough question.
I can start with one. So, okay, so this is my take. I mean, based I mean, we all know the challenges for Latin America in terms of the economics in the region, but I would say so. So if we think on that space specifically, we need to think always in a cost-efficient processing approach, right? Whether it's a product, it's a service, or and so forth, it's important to think in having something that is cost efficient. The reason I'm mentioning this is because if we think in sort of first world countries, let's say in Europe and the state, usually sustainability is expensive, right? If you want to be a sustainable person, usually it's expensive, right? Products for that market specifically, it's expensive. So when we translate that for Latin American countries, that is more tricky. It's cheaper in Latin America to not be sustainable, right? Just to use traditional plastics, just to mention something different to the food, right? But if we look more on sustainable food, that is quite expensive and it's mainly accessible for a few. So that is something that we need to change, right? We need to bring solutions and technology, and most importantly, if we want to produce an impact, it's key that the solution is cost efficient, right? That can be accessed by most of the people.
Yeah, I mean, I would also argue that perhaps this is valid everywhere now. Like the status quo is always the coziest solution, and changing is always hard. But I would definitely agree with you that in Latin America this is even perhaps exacerbated by the macroeconomics, which are we'll know a little bit tough there. Mario, what did you want to add on this?
Yeah, I think Latin America is kind of difficult for doing agtech and also foodtech because we have different cultures, climate conditions, access to technology and financial tools or instruments for farmers. So I always think that starting here in Chile, Argentina, Mexico, or whatever is the most difficult part because taking it as an example, Uber started in one city and Uber started doing the best in one city and then making these regulatory issues, product market fit. But this is a big city. So if you take this to Latin America, one big city as a San Francisco, for example, taking the Uber example, you must take 3 or maybe 4, not just taking the quantity of people, of cultures. It's just we have more spread items here. We have presence in 3 countries and it's very different. Taking the product market fit, the culture, how the farmers can pay you month over month. So the growth is, I think you have similar conditions regarding to the technology maybe, but you have other big things that you must have in the top of mind. For example, the technical stuff. We have a lot of connectivity issues, for example, in Brazil, in Central America, in Mexico, and Chile. So the technology is not so advanced in these different countries. So you have, in one hand, this kind of culture issues, technical issues, connectivity, financial. So all of those are, if you are thinking, double-clicking on each, you have different challenges. So I think it's the most important part here because doing agtech is hard. Raising money is hard for agtech. We have almost 5 billion industry. So that is the main reason why, as a founder, we must to seek another, how to say, not only the pool, it's just to think on the ocean, but starting small always. Being the best in your neighbor and then expand your business to the other countries in the region.
And then I guess the other stakeholders will follow, right? Because I mean, once you start to create your own network of, and you start to have a reputation, I mean, you'll be able to better connect with all the other players they're active in the space.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean that only makes sense, and I guess I would just use this as a segue to ask you another question, Mario, because I mean we all know quite a bit about how much regenerative agriculture has gained attention from the public, and we hear all the time about regenerative agriculture being a great practice. And even recently, PepsiCo, for example, committed $200 and some plus million into regenerative agriculture practices, even only in the US. So like a very sizable amount of money. And I just wanted to ask also, because you raised quite correctly the point about the different kind of climate, which is something that we all take for granted, but the different continents, different regions have different climates. So in general, like how would how does your IoT solution of array of products really address regenerative agriculture? Also depending on the different geography, I would add.
Yes, I think it's challenging all the time, because you think that you are doing good stuff in your country, in your former country. I mean, for this case, we started in Chile doing IoT, but we realized that doing hardware is hard, very hard. It's not just the working capital stuff. You have too many issues regarding to the connectivity and other things. So yeah, that challenge, I think could become a big opportunity, because you have different, how to say, maybe pain points in different countries, but the same kind of agriculture. Taking as an example, one apple farmer from Chile have different issues or problems for Peru or Mexico. So it's not just the product-led growth. You must think in other ways. For example, how to shift to another business model. Sometimes it's not just about the product. You must think on the business model also, and how we can create value, measure stuffs, and create value for farmers to do in more sustainable ways. So for us, we started with the IoT part. So imagine that we have this highway in all Latin America. So we must now to discover how to add value with this highway for third parties for doing sustainable practices in agriculture.
Yeah, I mean, so basically you're also taking, your action to the to the stakeholders that are directly involved into, I would say if we looked at a pyramid, probably they would be at the, the bottom, like those that, are actively, in your case, making food quite literally. Yes. And I'm talking about stakeholders, and now I'm moving on to Anagi to know a little bit more about, and specifically by the Perfekto's standpoint, consumer trends and preferences, because I mean, effectively you deal with customers quite often, and what is the general trend that you witness, in terms of like what is the preference that consumers have, and talking about the other side of the spectrum, and talking about corporates, which we all know are quite important into the functioning of the food and the food system, really. Do they understand these trends, or are they actually still basically shooting in the dark?
Yeah, two very, very interesting questions. I think we've had a pretty interesting evolution in the food tech, but especially in the food delivery market in Latin America, that was certainly accelerated by the pandemic, and people usually was a bit more uncertain or insecure to order online and making it super convenient. And then I think we've gotten to a point where customers like that convenience, and that they've tried it, and more people's open to ordering their fruits, veggies, groceries, and like meals online, but they don't want to sacrifice quality or price, right? And that's something that I think it's still challenging in the industry. But talking about the consumers trend, I think customers and what we've seen, and I've been in the grocery market for more years than Perfekto. We've seen that customers are looking for alternatives where they can have that convenience, but also have great quality, and always looking for like better prices, right? Yeah. And if you add to the equation the ability of like making sustainable and like more conscious purchases, I think that's definitely a big differentiator nowadays. And we don't want to do, and we cannot do greenwashing anymore. Like customers know what is sustainable. Customers know what is actually like a good sourcing and like a conscious ingredients. And so I think that's super interesting, and we need to be aware of this. So we talk to customers like the informed customers that they are today. And well, that's basically what we're trying to integrate within Perfekto, right? An option that it's definitely giving you the best of this world, right? That gets to your doorstep, but still like super fresh. And you're benefiting like other players in the chain. So I think that's one of the main trends that we're seeing: more informed, more conscious customers that don't want to sacrifice price or quality for convenience. Now, if we think about this other players, like the traditional players, I think that right now we have so many opportunities with data, technology, innovation to really challenge the status quo, that we've seen many corporations like wanting to ride that wave because they know they need to do it, right? And they can do it like along with startups that are already challenging the status quo. But I do think it's going to be like a slower transition, because most of the corporations have already like processes in place and like supply chains that are not that flexible to make that change as quickly as possible. And furthermore, they usually don't have aligned incentives of like the impact that they want to generate and the way that they're structured. So I think it's interesting that we have way more awareness right now, but I don't think it's going to be like such a fast change as we'd like to see. And that's where we, the food tech companies, can enter and make sure that this transition goes faster, and that we work along these big corporations and helping with this agility that we have, right? So yeah,
of course. I mean, it's always the case, right? Corporations move at a different speed than startups. So I mean, I guess we can only hope that they'll actually catch up faster than what we can hope they could. No, thank you for your input. That was definitely insightful. And I would guess I'll have we're almost out of time, and I just wanted to leave space for questions from the audience. So I would just have a couple of like very last questions for all of you guys once again. Sort of like if you could share a word of wisdom in terms of like, what is the one single thing that we are not asking ourselves when we're trying to challenge the status quo, as Anai was saying, in general in the food system? And yeah, what do you think is something that still needs to be done in this sense? I know this is a very tough question. Honestly, I wouldn't want to answer it. But you guys are all entrepreneurs, so I mean, you're more equipped than me to do so. Come on.
I'm gonna go for one. I mean, it's very general, but I think sometimes we need to ask ourselves, and also like investors should ask themselves and like corporations and stakeholders in general, like how does this sustainable like food industry future looks like? And I know that's like a very general question, but sometimes our incentives are so immediate and so short term, and we're focused like especially like in talking about investments sometimes in like making a lot of money and like very short-sighted. And I think if we would agree on like what would be like that so that world where we have a really well functioning like food industry, and that is sustainable, and that we can rely on it for the longer term without killing all of our resources? I think that's a tough question. It's like, sounds like a basic one and sounds like a very general one, but I think if we all agree on how that future looks like, then we can all like put our resources and working towards that future.
Well, I can only say thank you, Anai, for your input. It was definitely something that I wouldn't be able to come up myself with. It's only something that I guess you can extrapolate once you're into the industry. You're actively, an entrepreneur trying to really challenge what has been done forever, right? Does anyone else of you have another opinion, perhaps? No,
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree with Anna. I think, because maybe on a different perspective, when we think on a product or a service, maybe since I'm more in the long-term space, our solutions will come in a few years. So it's a lot of development. It's hard for us to really imagine how the world will be when we have the product out in the market. So we have projections, we have financial. But the reality is usually the reality usually surprises in how things will evolve, and I think we don't usually think that much, and more now that sustainability, environmental challenges are facing up, new decisions. They are sort of changing the world in an immediate basis. It's hard for us to think, okay, how the world. And to ask ourselves, okay, could be the world that much different when our products, services are in the market in a few years? It will be like same. And also something I would also try to ask is more on the more on the political side, right? Because this kind of technology, this kind of initiative needs a lot of political kind of incentives, advice and law, right? So law regulations and so forth. So that's more tricky, right? But we need to involve, and that's something that we usually do not do, is involve politics in the process.
that is absolutely something that would need to be done also. Speaking out of Italy, I can just mention the case of politics being involved in the case of, cellular agriculture. I don't know if anyone in you has seen, they're doing like a preemptive ban on the product without even being available for consumption yet. So definitely political involvement, the correct one, would be absolutely beneficial. Thank you very much for your input. I just wanted to open it up a little bit to the questions from the audience, because the chat was on fire. I know that some of you already tried to answer the questions from the public via chat, which thank you. Don't steal my job, by the way, but no, thank you absolutely for your inputs. I just wanted to pick it up a couple of them, because I think that they're very interesting, and they refer to LATAM, to the LATAM region specifically, and obviously they're addressed to anyone. And basically, one would be is about the willingness of Latin American public to try new products, and I would probably add try new technologies in general. Like, what is your opinion on the willingness, the aptitude that Latin American people have towards, I would say, new food, like new food technologies? You can only answer this. You guys are based there. I can only read reports about it.
I would like to say regarding that in Latin America, big corporations are as interested as other corporations from the rest of the world in trying new ingredients, new products in general, because the market is full of issues nowadays, from supply chain issues to the ingredients that are used to produce food. So I think that is just a matter of identifying those key pain points that companies nowadays have, that in Latin America, it's a great market to test. We've seen a lot of interest in replacing, for example, artificial ingredients all around the world, but Latin America is no exception, and they are as open, if no more, than other regions of the world.
I mean, that is I think it's surprising, perhaps, considering what Martin was saying about the price being a crucial deciding factor in that region. But what you're saying, Juan Pablo, is definitely something that surprises me a little bit. But absolutely, I mean, I can only agree with you. I don't know if anyone else has another point on this. Otherwise, I would ask another question. Yeah, it's about the startup community in Latin America, and generally, sorry, it has gone away. And in general, how do you see startups working together to grow within the region? So again, talking about probably stakeholders and collaboration, what is the secret recipe here?
I think we are seeing a lot of effort from the general community in startups, especially in that current environment where the market is tough on us in some aspects, and we have a lot of pressure on to maintain jobs, not to be too tough on cutting talents there. We're seeing communities like what Latitude is building, or Utopia, which are pretty useful. No, I mean we are more connected than ever. Like I knew most of the guys here on the panel. We haven't talked yet, but we know that we're just one WhatsApp away. And I think that's something that's amazing in the food tech and ag tech space. Like at the end of the day, we are all willing to change or find some new tools to add value in a specific sector that we all love from our aspect. And so we all have something in common, apart from trying to be good entrepreneurs. But I think that's something that's being built. We have a great community in Latin America. We're all willing to do something for our region. And I think that's something that brings us together right now. And I think we've seen a few funds willing really to create communities around their investment portfolio. And I think we should be using it as much as possible to find ways to collaborate, to find ways to optimize processes, to find different contacts, and to really create that network effect that we all need to bring value to the table.
Yeah, and effectively, it's all about. I mean, what you're describing is effectively just like a working ecosystem at the end of the day, right? So like the different parts of the machine that are working together into creating, like a very thriving ecosystem, which is something that we're already seeing. As I mentioned at the very beginning, based on a few macroeconomic points, the signal is that definitely, the region is growing. So we can only hope so that, like collaboration in that sense would speed up even more the process, right? Who else wants to add anything on this? I'm sure that you have another opinion on this, right?
So I would fully just very quick. I would fully agree with the idea. I don't see any other way to move forward with no collaboration, right? So it's collaboration is key. This is very dynamic. This is very dynamic space, and even between competitors, we can see now more than ever that even competitors are collaborating in new development, in new product. Because if you want just to be fast and to put the product in the market as soon as possible, you may want something that somebody else has. So I would say the path to the market for startup is a priority to look for collaborations and for partnering.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like I think that the collaborator die is more actual than ever, right? And we can only try to foster this in the region as much as we can by being one WhatsApp away, as you mentioned, perhaps that's the best way of making the ecosystem thrive even more. I think we're out of time, which is a shame because I wanted to ask another question, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. And I think that we can finish on time right here. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining this panel. It was great to know you and to know about your companies and what you do. Absolutely, I mean, if anything, if you want to connect, if you want to reach out to us, to each other, I mean, let's try to collaborate, everyone, and to make LATAM, and I would say, every food system a little bit less status quo. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for joining.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.